Welcome, everyone, to another Brand 50 podcast. And today we have Stephanie Odell interviewing Claudia Goetzelmann. I hope I'm getting that right. I should with my last name, Erie Artboard. I should be able to pronounce other people's names. So Claudia Goetzelmann, and she's a professional photographer, but of course, during COVID, all the shoots went away. And tell us how she pivoted and what she's doing now.
Well, yeah, Claudia and I met a couple of years ago on one of my very first Celebrate the Gray photo shoots. And so she's a fashion photographer, travels around the world doing photography, but during COVID, everything shut down. And she really talks about having the time and space to go internally and figure out what was really her passion and purpose at this point in her life. And she really looks at her life as this ebb and flow journey. It's kind of constantly changing. Not that she doesn't want to do photography anymore, but she really wanted to help do trauma therapy and spiritual life coaching. She has started a new business called Permission to Bloom Coaching and really wants to focus on women and help women get over the trauma, not get over, but identify the trauma in their past. And it can be small or, no trauma is insignificant. So looking at that trauma and how it affects your life and your growth in life. And so she's pivoted to that in addition to still doing photography.
And that's what she talked about this during the interview, the awareness that if people are aware of how and why they feel the way they do, it usually goes back to some, like you said, some past trauma. It doesn't even have to be that big, but it stays in you subconsciously. And then, of course, the voice in our head tells us we can't do anything. And by being aware, it brings it all out.
Right. And some of these things go back to childhood she was talking about and really identifying that trauma, dealing with it, and not letting it dictate how you move forward. And then you start to see the patterns in what you've done. And we talked a lot about her photography work also. Is when she is on a job, she really tries to make people feel comfortable and get to know them and sees the beauty shine out from the outside. But now she's doing this internal work, and it's really interesting how they combine so well together.
Yeah, and you can tell that she practices what she preaches, because there was a little part where she talked about COVID was actually a blessing because it made her slow down. And I hear this a lot from people. Like once your whole world changes, you have to do something about it. And it made her slow down, made her internalize what's really going on, what's important to her. And that's why she's on this path now.
Yeah. And she also said it may, I may do something different in 5 years, 10 years. So I love the idea that don't get so set in this is what I'm set to do. It may evolve. It may turn into something else. And if you look at the things you've done in your past, they normally, if you take some time, and COVID gave her that time to kind of see how they all fit together. It's kind of like this jigsaw puzzle for her that the pieces are all making sense together. So yeah, I said to her, she's had this super successful career as a fashion photographer. And a lot of people would say, okay, I've done what I'm supposed to do in my career. But she really is looking to go a little deeper and do more passionate work for herself and others. So listen in. I hope you enjoy the podcast, and thank you. Welcome to Brand 50 Podcast. I'm Stephanie Odell here with Claudia Goetzelmann, and we are going to talk about reinvention in midlife and beyond. But Claudia has a really interesting background and is pivoting a little bit recently and exploring other things in midlife and beyond. So I'm thrilled to have you here today, Claudia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. And Claudia and I, it's interesting how we met. We met probably over a year and a half ago. It seems like 2 years, maybe 2 years. Time with everything right now, it goes so quickly. But I had the opportunity to work with Claudia. Claudia is a fashion photographer, and I was on a photo shoot with her for a brand called Kikoko, which is a cannabis wellness company for women. And they were doing I forget what the exact title.
Rock Your Age. It was the Rock Your Age campaign. Exactly. Yes. Totally fitting into this podcast.
Yes. Rock Your Age campaign. And two of our models from Celebrate the Gray were part of the campaign and part of the shoot. And I remember our first interaction, we started talking about age, and just we probably could have talked the whole day when we were sitting there, and we've kept in touch and follow each other. And so I wanted to interview you about your work you're doing now, but also the work you're getting more involved in.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a journey. I mean, COVID put us all into a deeper, maybe awareness. Because of all that. So, I mean, I should speak for myself. I mean, the path I'm on now more than ever is definitely came out of COVID. Yeah.
Because you had time to reflect about your passion and your purpose in life. And
yeah, I think it was partly forced on me because, photography is always the first thing to go. And there's a pandemic. I mean, there's no advertising needed.
Right.
There was nothing photographed. I mean, studios were closed. Neither did I wanted to be in a studio with 20 other people. We didn't know what this was all about. Right. So it was not essential, not deemed essential. And that sort of forced me more into this path I sort of started walking maybe 3-4 years ago before COVID. And that is the spiritual life coach training. And then I literally, this was last year in April, I put this on in my room at my parents' house. I put this paper on. It's like, I want to study with Dr. Gabor Mate. And then in November, I applied and I got into this program. And so now I'm studying grief and trauma addiction therapy. And
amazing. So you manifested it.
I made it happen. Manifested. Yeah, it was very powerful to realize that maybe we can manifest things when we believe in it. It's we are our own hurdles. So
we're our own storyteller, aren't we? And I think we get caught up in the negative storytelling in our own head more than the possibility story head in our own.
Yeah. And this is a beautiful intro to this conversation about aging and about who we are and the stories we carry. And I was really thinking about this earlier, because at the end of the day, it has to do with aging, but it's really such a core thing in us, and maybe more in women, or maybe it's equal because men don't really talk about these insecurities. But whatever age you're in, you carry these burdens, you carry these blockages. You think, oh, I'm not good enough for this. Oh, I can't do this. And it just sort of morphs and transforms into a different issue or topic, right? So it's interesting to also be really aware of it, that the topic in the podcast of like being in the midlife does not only apply to that. It's also a structure we all carry as being human.
Yeah. And did you have background in grief counseling, or what drew you to wanting to do this kind of work?
So 5 years ago, I went through this very traumatic experience of a divorce. And for me, it was like a burn down. I felt like I was dying and parts of me were dying. So I'm a very curious person. So I got really curious about death. And next thing, as synchronicities go, I was in Boulder. I found myself in Boulder and did the education to become an end-of-life doula, meaning working with...
Wow, that's amazing work. I saw that on your resume, and I thank you for that work, because it's work, it's one to talk about death. It's another to be entrenched in it and help people maneuver and move through it.
Yeah, but for me, maybe because I had this, I've really felt like that I died, that some of me died, and then I got to rebirth myself. And it's, I mean, I don't want to go too much into the depths, but when somebody leaves your life you truly love, that is a different kind of death than somebody dies of a cause and really leaves this world. So I don't know, I was really drawn to this topic, and it helped me understand the process. And then I felt that we as a society don't talk about it. We just push it aside, and it comes, it's inevitable, right? We all were born to die. So then I thought I really want to use this knowledge and the tools I've learned and bring it to the midlife. And then I established Permission to Bloom, my life coach spiritual practice to work with women and really help them to find these hurdles and empower themselves and live a much more,
joyful,
attuned and contempt life in moving forward.
It's fantastic. And how are you finding? You have clients and you're working with your clients now? How are you finding the work?
Well, so right now I'm more or less a full-time student. The
Okay.
program is pretty immersive. And then now there's also, again, amazing some photography projects. And that's why, I'm also doing that. So I have to balance it right now. And then for the coaching, I had some clients, but then also it sort of tapered off. And most of the things I'm doing now is via Zoom. And it opened up a whole nother, how should I say, it's amazing that we live in a time where Zoom is available to us and we can be connected like this and establish trusting connections and conversations. But then when you do something in person, it's just a whole other level. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you are a photographer and you're doing this work because you see people differently and from the outside and the inside. And when you do photography, I'm sure you see things in them that they don't see in themselves. And the beauty of women. I know that shoot that we were on together, they was all older women. It was 50s to, I think the oldest gal, the
almost
grandmother
80s.
was 90, maybe.
Or even that, older,
Yeah. And to be able to show that beauty and rewrite the age models and talk about being beautiful as we age versus being old as we age, and that, and then now to go talk about the transformation on the inside too. That it's really interesting that you're combining those two things.
Yeah, it's also sort of an epiphany I had maybe 2 years ago, because I realized, so as a photographer, I truly have to make a connection, a trusting connection with my subject instantly, because I want something, and that can only be given when we connect.
Right.
And so I'm a people person. I love connecting to people. So that sort of was already there, and then now I'm taking it just to another level. And it's establishing again trust that people share stories, or even share things they may have never shared with anybody else.
Yeah.
And I feel that all of my life people have told me stories, and that's the way I connect also with my subjects when I photograph.
I saw that in action because one of the models had never modeled really, and you made her feel super comfortable. And I know she had gone through breast cancer and she had scars, and she was really uncomfortable with some of the shoot going in. And by the time we left, I mean, everyone was enamored with her, and the videographer from New York was talking to her for 45 minutes. And I was saying, your time is, you said 10 minutes. And he's like, oh my God, she's so interesting. So just this intergenerational opportunity to affect how people see each other. Mm-hmm. And you're a big part of that because you see people, the beauty in people, and that the inside too. So it was really fun to be on that part of the side of the camera. And I remember you asking, can you take some pictures of me in action with you, because you probably don't get photographed that often. I mean, no. I see that you're sharing more photographs of yourself on your Instagram, but that's also powerful to see the interactions between you and your people you're photographing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. How is ageism being? Do you think there's things changing on shoots? Are you seeing a request for older models? Is there better representation?
I think there's a growing awareness. I still think we have some ways to go. I think there is a theory, but the practicality, there's still sort of a hesitance to that. And maybe I'm hoping with this next generation of art directors coming in, much, much younger, that there's a different way of thinking, because when you see how already the genders are broken down, there's this whole gender neutrality is, happening. It's just happened overnight. And it's just this, and I feel this sometimes now when I go on shoots, that there is a broader acceptance. While let's say 3 years ago, it felt much more cliquey in that sense, that the art directors wanted to work with somebody much is their same age, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's also because maybe they grew up in that way. So maybe, it's all interconnected. Maybe the parents of this new generations who's coming in, maybe, or the zeitgeist is just simply different. But I'm hoping, and I really hope so, that we just can really just be human and see each other and see what we can offer for one another, and then work together in that sense. And also really make sure that we not just shoot young models and there's a place and space and everything for that, but there is a huge part of the percentage of humans on this planet who are amazingly attractive, just they're not 25,
right,
50 and above, but they're so powerful and they're so beautiful, and the way they carry themselves and what they want to wear and what they do, and there's so much to share, and so that needs to be addressed in every advertising campaign.
Yeah. Do you see any brands doing a good job of that?
Well, I think I mentioned to you, I was happy to see Zara,
yeah,
the Spanish clothing brand, having gray-haired, beautiful women on set. But then in the last round, when I looked, I didn't see it again, and I was wondering why. And then also, I mean, it's interesting because I spent quite a bit of time this past year in Berlin. And it's just Europe. There's a different way of being with age.
Mm-hmm.
People are much more bold in having gray hair. I find I'm still looking when I see people, should be like guys also, and women dressed really cool, and then riding their bike and the gray hair flows in the wind. We're like, wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That there's not the stigma, which I find here in the US, it's definitely still very present. And especially like in the world I work in, the fashion, beauty world, where everything is so use oriented, and also all the lotions and creams, it's just young forever, more makeup, so be young.
Right. And we buy into that age denial messaging that we're fed, and think don't look like we did, then we are not part of society. And that's what I hear from women, that they feel invisible and not part of society because they don't see themselves. So the power that a brand can give back to a very wealthy woman, I mean, the spending power of the 50 plus woman is untouched really right now.
But then, it also, I feel like it always goes hand in hand. I think the consumer, so the woman, also needs to demand it.
Yes.
And I always would like to push back on this when I hear this a lot, also from women I work with. They're like, I'm invisible now. And I'm like, wait, but why are you invisible? Are you really truly invisible? Is this a projection you put outwards into the world? Because if you feel that way, you will be invisible.
100%.
So, you have to be bold. You have to be your confident, badass self and show that confidence and be like, no, here I am. And then people will recognize. I think this comes back again to this. It's beyond the age, but it's I understand the power is tremendous on women when you're not as young anymore. And then we are our worst inner critics.
I completely agree. And I always say too, that we have to be very vocal of who we are, what we're doing, and what age we are. Yeah. So other people are like, oh, that's what 50s looks like. So that's what 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. We're living much longer and healthier than we used to. Yeah. And the 80 of today is not the 80 of 20 years ago. So I agree. It's upon us. We can't just blame marketers. We have to really educate, show who we are, what we're doing. You're a successful photographer, but you've decided to do more work, do a different work, and really follow your passion and your purpose. And I think sometimes people get caught up in, well, I'm successful, I'm making money at this, I'll just keep doing this, versus ever taking the time, which it sounds like you had that opportunity and time to think, what fills me up? What do I really want to be doing?
Yeah.
And I think women, the permission to do that, because we have had careers, or we've raised kids, or our husband is more successful, or our partner is more successful, that we just kind of settle into this space of, this is who I'm supposed to be, versus taking the time to question, is this who I'm supposed to be? Is this the best version of myself? Mm-hmm. So I love that you're you're doing that. I mean, is that scary to you to think about pivoting so drastically? I mean, there's definitely a combination of work for you, but
No, I feel it's the right thing, and I'm not giving up the other. I'm still there. It also made me realize that I really love being a photographer. I feel like, in a humble way, I know I'm good at it. But then I feel like I'm just building something else. And age, again, it's like, people in general often say, well, can I start over again? Can I do something suddenly so radically different? And I would say, yeah, you can do it when you're 70. It's your
Right.
life. Just go for it. And if it's your passion, then it will also manifest. So this is calling me right now. Who knows what
Right.
I'm doing in 20 years, in 15 years? I don't know. Maybe I'm doing something else again.
Yeah.
But, it's that whole thing, permission. I think we really, truly need to give ourselves this permission to be somebody else. We don't need to hold on to that same persona, the same mindset of what we have established from, let's say, maybe the 30s into, our careers and the marriage or the children. And now suddenly there's this transition into a whole new life cycle, a whole new phase. So we can give ourselves that permission and the freedom to be somebody else.
Do you feel that your past experiences really feed into and have kind of brought you to this point to do this coaching and work?
Yeah, I think it was an accumulation of all of the things I've done, realizing that the photography was the precursor with building the trust that I have this, let's say, gift to connect with people, my life journey and my burn down and rebirthing, as I say.
Yeah.
All of this sort of that it led me there. But I also really that I allowed to listen to my inner voices, to my intuition, and said, yeah, I'm going to do that. And is it easy? You asked, and it's like, no. I mean, when I had this sort of vision, I was like, I'm going to study with Dr. Gabor Mate. Oh my God, there were so many voices. Like, why would he choose me? How am I going to get into this? I don't have this and education and that, and so on and so on. I mean, but if I don't try, and this is for all of us, then it will always be a no.
Right.
But if I try, then if it's a no, then okay, then so be it. But at least I said I showed up for this calling. And when it manifests, then hey, even better.
Yeah. You never know what they're going to say. Like,
no.
What's the worst that can happen? The worst, if you kind of think about the worst and then you don't let that hold you back,
right.
It's amazing the things that start happening. Especially when you find what you're supposed to be doing right now, the doors that open and the people that want to collaborate and the things that come. But I think it's also giving yourself permission to accept those gifts or those opportunities that are coming and not question, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I can't do that. I don't have the education. I don't have the work experience.
Yeah, I mean, we all do that. We come up with all these reasons. Instead of being just making a list of like, I am actually that. These are reasons why it should be happening. And then everything is energy, right? That's the energy we also project outward. But if we just sit in this negative mindset, then it's also that energy we project outward. And that's what the world is picking up. So it's not an arrogant energy saying I'm good enough. It's just like knowing, because we're all imperfect. So we're good enough in that way we live our life, and hopefully we all put our best foot forward, and tomorrow we put a better foot forward, so.
And it's small little successes, right? Upon each other. It's not thinking I got caught up in the end goal. What was the end goal? And it was like, just do today what you can do today. And you just don't know where that's going to lead you tomorrow.
Yeah. And exactly. And that's also the thing with, the marketing and the growing awareness of like changing the industry or ageism, that it's slowly, by instead of me, I'm just saying me, but it could be anybody who works in an office and feels ageism. I can, you can drop, or that person can drop into a victim mode and be like, wow, here do we have it again. Ageism, and now I'm confronted with this. Or one can rise to the occasion, muster up and say, I feel this. Can we talk about this? I'm not attacking you. Maybe you're not even aware
Right.
of this, but I would like to raise this issue, and because it needs to change, I don't feel comfortable. We can always come with compassion, because that other person, who knows why that other person is actually reacting a certain way. But that really is the lasting and most impactful change we can establish from the ground up in our environment, and that will ripple out into the next round. And maybe because of that, some changes in that office will be implemented. So,
Yeah. Well, I can see you're going to be an amazing coach. And how do you, just looking at you having this conversation with you, I can tell that women will benefit from starting work with you. So how do people work with you? What's your process with women?
Well, right now I am only working, because of my studies, with trauma clients. And I have to do practice. There's a practice amount of practices
right.
I have to
hours
do.
that you have to do.
Yeah, and then some of it already translated into, I want to stay on with you and I want to keep working with you. But it's really about working out these roadblocks established in childhood trauma.
Do you find that people, it's a lot of childhood trauma? Is it messaging they're given, friends and families, comments, or is it just a combination of many things that hold people back from kind of moving forward?
I think it's so. Just to maybe explain a little bit the process, I think what happens, so when we're little, we're pure, we're authentic, right? And what we need in our lives as babies is food, shelter, and love. And that's our attachment to our parents. So if we don't get that, and a lot of children don't get that because the families are dysfunctional, there is, already addictions, there's violence, there's whatever, split families, divorces, you name it, so many situations. But we still need the love. So in order to get that love, the food and shelter, we change our behavior. So when as a 4-year-old or as a 3-year-old, we don't have the cognitive understanding to say, I need food and you don't give this to me, or I need love, I don't get it, or I'm not seen by you. So we've established these behavioral patterns in our subconscious, which then help us to get that. But then as adults, they become the roadblocks. Mm-hmm. And they show up as addictions, numbing, codependent relationship, anger fits, you name it, so many situations.
Yeah.
But because it's been established such a long time ago, we think this is our identity. And so then Amazing. This is where the work starts. We have to, loosen things up and make space and realize, wow, this is actually not me.
And then that's got to be just amazing catalyst for possibilities in their life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's true of most people, that we hold on to these traumas that we don't even realize how deep they were and how much they've directed our paths in our lives.
Yeah, and it's often, sometimes it's not even a super traumatic event. It is really what happens inside of us because of the outside event. And so what happens on the outside, if that changes our inside, that's that adaptation, and that's where it gets, messy.
And so what are you're on your journey right now. I've been on my journey of transformation and realizing my best version of myself and what really fills me up. And what would you encourage other women to get started? How would they get started?
I would say awareness. Awareness is the key of everything. And we are so afraid of ourselves. But if we can really look at ourselves and see why we react, who we are, why we do certain things we do, and by learning, for instance, by journaling is a very simple way, writing things down, meditation, going to nature, and really sort of thinking about who we need to be, who we want to be, and what stops us, and maybe making some lists. And it's a long process, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. But the more we know, the more awareness we can bring to our own self, there will be wisdom. Our body will tell us.
You think you feel or seen transformations in people's bodies when they start really addressing the issues?
Yeah, and I think our body is our our sacred vessel. I mean, we have aches, we have back pain, we don't sleep well. Our body tells us there's something not right. If we don't eat well, we have body aches. I mean, there's so many things which we always, and then we dismiss that. But I feel like there is this message our body tells us from early on. If we, again, bring this awareness that's missing, and we're like, wait, what does my body want to tell me right now? Why am I not sleeping well? So I'm stressed. What am I stressed about? What is stressing me out? I mean, it goes on and on. It's inquiry. That's the thing. We have to really just get curiosity about ourselves.
Not be afraid of what you may find.
No. And I feel there's always a reframe. You can, again, be in this victim mode and find, oh my God, really? Oh, now I'm stressed and and I have to deal with this. Or we can say, wow, this is beautiful that my body can tell me this right now. Therefore, I have an opportunity to change it. So, it's always like how do we go through life? How are we looking out into the world?
I think too, for women, as we age, our bodies, things start happening with our bodies that we account for menopause or aging, when it may in fact be something internal that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and even maybe the change of our body. That's also, it's beautiful that our body is changing. We're told, oh wow, we're entering a whole new phase. Maybe we have something else to share forward. Maybe we can tap into a certain wisdom we have gained over all these years. Maybe it is time to slow down a bit. Maybe it is time to really look into the sun and go for a walk. So and slow and be not just running from one place to another, because every phase in our life has a purpose. And then maybe that's just this transition it's like the seasons, there's spring, there's summer, there's fall, there's winter, but they're all so beautiful by itself.
That's a really good analogy to think about aging, that there's power in each phase of it, and to really pay attention to that and put more positive words on the stage. Talking about strength and power and what my body's done in my almost 60 years versus what I can't maybe do as well as I used to, turns the narrative in my head around.
Mm-hmm. But then you can do a lot of other things you wouldn't have done, you could have not done, you wouldn't wanted to do when you were 20. But now you get to do that. And honoring that, I think, is just so beautiful. And you didn't have that calmness and the wisdom then, but now you do, right? So I feel like it's so much has to do with the outlook. And winter is so incredibly beautiful, the calm, the silence. And we think there's nothing, and maybe it's all sort of lays bare and frozen, the landscape. But then there is so much. It's a preparation for the next spring. There is this rumination. I don't know. It's just, again, I find it very powerful to offer this reframe. Because
oh my goodness, you have a book. Have you written a book? You need to write a book with photographs.
I see it. For giving me another project.
I see it. Not right away, maybe, but I hope you're journaling and keeping notes on all this. And I mean, it would be very powerful. I think just those visuals and narratives of thinking and seeing things differently is powerful for everybody.
Right.
And how is it on sets for you when you're with younger people that meet you and are super inspired by you and what you're doing, and that you're doing, maybe they don't know about the bloom work that you're doing, but what's that experience? What's the experience like for you on sets?
I love being on set, and I just chose for myself that I see people as soul to soul. I feel we also, that's another thing, I feel we need the intergenerational interactions. I can learn something from somebody way younger, like somebody way younger can learn something from me. But I want that. I want to have that freshness, that what somebody who is maybe, let's just say, for lack of a better word, not tainted or doesn't have that much package. There is something, oops, sorry, my phone is ringing. So it's just, I love that. It gives me power. It gives me energy.
Yeah, I think it's, again, changing the way you perceive a situation.
Yeah.
What you put out in the universe and what you get back from what you've put out is
right.
That you have more power in it than you realize.
Yeah. And if I come with this energy to somebody or be on the set, I think then we connect on that level. And then the outer body falls away. Yeah. Because we just really connect on that level of creating together. Then there is no judgment. And it's up to me. If I come and be like, oh my God, I have to work with this person and maybe they're judging me because I'm so-called older, then I project that energy outward and I'm stiff and I feel awkward and then they feel stiff and awkward and then we go down in this slippery slope where we don't want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love the power that you're taking back in what you're passionate about and continuing to grow your photography, but also really bloom into the next phase of your life. So how do people find you if they'd like to work with you or just see your work? How do they find you?
Well, I guess right now the best it's Permission to Bloom Coaching. That's the website. Claudia Goetzelmann for the photography. And then Instagram, and it's permission_to_bloom, and then also Claudia Goetzelmann for. So I'm more active currently with Permission to Bloom on Instagram, but I have to change it again. So since we're hopefully out of the pandemic and sort of can come back to studios and fun projects.
Well, your photography on your Instagram is beautiful. I was very inspired about how you set it up, and it's visually, of course, beautiful and super inspiring. So lots of exciting things. COVID's been good to you as far as self-growth, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it's, I feel COVID was a gift to all of us. And again, it's a choice what we chose to do with it. And I feel, for me personally, I was forced to look inward, and also I was forced to calm down a little bit because there was no running around from studio to another job and another studio. So, we don't usually have these moments that often in our lives.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for being here today with me on Brand 50, Reinvention in Midlife and Beyond. And it's exciting, your next part of your journey and what you're going to be doing and helping so many people with your work. So thrilled for you and thrilled to finally talk. We've been trying to organize this for a while. So thrilled that we finally got the chance to talk to each other. And you never know where those meetings will take you.
No, and thank you for having me. And I love that you have this podcast and that you're putting and also the work you are doing. It's beautiful. So, we'll all do our part in changing the world and making it a better place.
Making it more accessible for everybody.
Exactly.
Right? All right. Well, thank you. And we will be in touch.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. For more information on all of our guests, go to brand50.com, where you'll find show notes and other resources to help guide you through the next exciting phase of your life. Please consider subscribing to our podcast on iTunes, along with other platforms, and write us a review while you're there. You can also sign up for our email list on our site to get the latest podcast updates. We promise you won't get a constant barrage of emails from us, and you can bet we'll protect your privacy as well. You can also follow us on social media accounts listed on our site. Thank you for listening.